Hi guys, Evan here. Today we're looking at PT3 Game 2, and this is obviously a very old prep test. It's the third one that LSAT, the makers of the LSAT test, consider a modern test. You know, anything before PT1 they don't even publish because the test used to be substantially different. However, the game itself is just like one you might see on a modern test. So it shows you how little in some ways the form of the LSAT has changed. And these old prep tests can be great practice. Today we're looking at PT3 Game 2 in a way that is going to be really helpful for absolute beginners. So if you're in one of our lessons, this explanation, this walkthrough is really geared towards you. We're going to take a closer look at the phases of attack. So experienced game takers may find this a bit on the slow side. You can skip ahead towards the question analysis and just take a look at maybe the general setup that we arrive at after this initial analysis. Okay, so for our first phase of attack, what do we do? The first step with any game is always getting your pieces together and picking which one's going to be the game pieces and what's going to become the base or the game board, which we're going to be like drawing down here, and what'll be the pieces that we go up here, that we put up here, that are going to drop into the game board. So what I always say, especially with basic ordering games, your mantra is always that whatever variable set, whatever list of things that they're talking about that has an inherent order, like 1, 2, 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc., that's going to become your game board, your base, right? So what are we looking at in this game? We've got exactly 7 houses on a street, each house occupied by one of 7 families, the Khans, Lows, Mirrors, etc. And there's no order to that. These people, you know, we don't know who's going to go left or right yet, right? But we do know that these houses are lined up on a street. All the houses are on the same side of the street, which runs from west to east. So that has a sense of order, right? You can just picture it where your street's running here, you know, and then we've got these little houses lined up over here. Sorry, those are extremely ugly little Monopoly-looking houses right there. But it's got a sense of order, right? And that's going to become our base, these 7 houses, right? And then we'll stick the families into them. So let's line them up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so picture each one of these empty spots as one of these houses, right? And then we're going to drop the families into these spots as we learn more about the order. So you got to list your families up top, and I'll do that now. So this is our list of game pieces, K, L, M, N, O, P, and R. And at this point, you can pretty much stop thinking about them as families in a house, and they're just, at this point, little game pieces that we're going to throw into these empty spaces on our base. And there's one little wrinkle to keep track of in this game beyond just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is that you want to keep track of the way the street runs. This is the west side over here. So like I'd point, that's west, that direction. This is the east side over here, right? That's a really ugly E. Let me redo that. And anytime you get some information like that, all it's going to do is help tell you things about the order. Like there might be like M lives in the westmost house or something like that. We don't know yet, but never anything to worry about. It's just a way that they're going to give you more information about the order. So this is the west end, and then the houses run 1 through 7 to the east side. And that pretty much closes out the first phase where we get the game board all set up and then get our game pieces marshaled, and we're ready to attack the rules. For the rules, the first one we have is that the Rutans, I don't know if I'm saying that right, don't live on the first or the last house on the street. So we do that as a simple not rule. This X tells us that we know, this cross out tells us that the R can't be in 1 or 7. So they got to land somewhere in these middle spots. Next rule, the Khans live in the 4th house from the west end. So just count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is something that we can diagram internally. If you're if you've read the lesson, you know that whenever you can diagram internally, and we just diagram these rules internally as well, right? We got them right into our main diagram rather than out here, you know, on the left. If you can get something internally, it's ideal to do so because it's going to form a more powerful visual reminder as to how these things have to be ordered in the future, rather than doing a two-step process of reading, okay, R can't be first or seventh, you know, if I were to write this over here, R not 1, R not 7. It's much easier to just get this visual reminder here. And our next rule is the same way. We're told that the cons live in the fourth house from the west. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we just poke K in right there. And that's a permanent feature of the game now. You can't have anything except K in the 4 spot. So anytime you're redrawing this board or whatever, you have to put that K in 4. Permanent placement. Next rule is also something that we can diagram internally. And as usual, you know, we're representing things visually if we can, because rather than just writing M is next to K, M next to K, you know, I'd rather have a visual reminder in here because that's going to be much better at telling me, all right, you know, I better see that M right next to K. So in this case, I like to put the M right here, then little arrows dropping in to where it can possibly go, which is the 3 or the 5 spot. Then we get one last rule, which is that the Piots live east of both the cons and the Mures, but west of the lows. So this is an ordering rule. It's a pretty complex one if you're just getting started. We have K and M have to be to the west of P, right? P lives to the east of these two. But P is to the west of low. So that means, you know, P has to be over towards this east side further. And we'd have this, right? So anytime you're looking at the game, you need to see this order. Something for beginners to know, it doesn't matter, you know, who's first here, K or M, but what matters is that they're both to the left of P, to the west, so to speak, in the parlance of this game. And then the L always just has to be to the right of the P. So you're always going to see this chain of KPL. And that's our last rule. Are we done here? Well, we're done with the rules phase. It's time to move on to the inference phase of the game. Is there more we can do to understand this setup? For me, I'm looking at this big block, and just remember, for you guys who are just starting to see games, this is stuff that I won't expect you to do right away. So you're just kind of watching and taking a look at how it works out for an experienced game taker. And eventually you'll get so you're doing this stuff like it's second nature. And what I see here when I'm analyzing this game is I'm like thinking, okay, well, this M is either in this 3 or this 5 spot. And then say the M jumps in over here. Well, there's not a whole lot of room for this P and L. They'd be fixed in place, right? So I'm thinking I'd like to get some of these possibilities on to the paper in the form of scenarios, which is something we'll work with really extensively later on. And what I do is I'm going to split the game board up, and then I'm going to do it once with the M over here, and then see what the possibilities look like, and then once with the M over here. So let me get this game board redrawn down below, and we'll take a look at these two scenarios. So here you can see I copied everything down. I'm now going to get rid of this M with arrows going to 3 and 5 because we're actually going to map those possibilities out. So in this first one, I'm going to put M up here, right? And this one looks a little like it's going to be a little more difficult to know what's going on. But down here, if we put the M in 5, that really fixes things in place here. Now, look at this PL, KM, PL chain. Well, KM, and now there's only one place P and L can go. They're stuck back here. And that's an inference right there. So, right, we're in the inference phase. We infer that if M is fixed in 5, then we can determine where P and L can go, right here and here. Now, it's also good to try and make further inferences if you can, you might want to take stock of what's left. We got these two variables up here don't have any rules about them. They're what's called floaters. And then the only remaining person that we have is R, right? So R is stuck in 2 or 3. You could write a little arrow with dual options here being like R is going in 2 or 3. Well, what else do we know? We know that means N and O are the only possible options for spot 1. So we draw that as a split option down here. And then R is going to go into either 2 or 3, and then the remaining one of those will be an N or an O as well. So we've made a lot of inferences. Basically, if we put M in 5, we now know more or less what the whole game board looks like. Now, up here, things are a little trickier because K, M, there's still a bunch of places where this P and L can go in our chain. You could have P, L, you could have P, L, you could have P, L. The only thing I would do here is just as a reminder is just draw that chain from the side and get it up internally, you know? And then that just reminds us that we have to see this PL hanging out in this second half of the board. Just like on the bottom, we know that NO is the only 2 variables that can go in this first spot. The R can't go there. There's no one else left that could go there. So that's another pretty key inference to make. And then these remaining spots that PL doesn't take up is going to be either NO, whatever we didn't use in that one spot, or R. That's getting into some pretty complex stuff. So if you're not totally following what's going on, don't worry about it too much. But that was a general look at the inference phase of the game. What we ended up with here are 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 here, and then scenario 2 down here, that cover together all the possibilities for this game, all the possible orders. If you remember back to the How Logic Games Work lesson, what we did was we started out from a ton of different possibilities, and now everything's represented here. You know, this is scenario 1 covers all the situations where M is in 3. Number 2 covers all the other options where M is in 2. You could, you know, possibly map this all out all further, but I think these 2 scenarios do a great job of handling it. So with this, we're pretty much ready to start looking at the questions. So question A asks us, which of the following families could live in the house that's furthest to the east? So pretty simple question. And I'm going to just plot out our options here. The K, M's, the N's, the P's, or the R's. And you could just look at your 2 diagrams here. R's definitely not a choice. That's in direct contradiction of a rule, right? P has to have L after him. So there's no way that P could ever be at the end, right? Furthest east, that's a big no-no. N looks much more possible. I'm going to at least hold on to that, and I can eliminate the other 2. Yeah, M and K, they're stuck right in the middle. Look in either of our 2 diagrams, they're stuck right in the middle. Gives us C as our answer choice. N could be at the end. You see that possibility not diagrammed in, but by elimination, it's implicit, right? And it would be possible up in scenario 1 here. Okay, continuing the attacking the questions phase of the game here, we're looking at problem number 9. It's asking us who can't live next to the cons. Well, if you look at both your diagrams, you'll see that P and L look like maybe likely suspects, right? But then up here in scenario 1, it looks like you could, remember, get P next to K. Imagine you have P, L, you stick R in here, and this could be N or O or N or O, right? It would be possible to get P next to K. But L always has to have P sandwiched in between it and K. So that's your correct answer right away. You don't have to do every question by elimination. In the Phases of Attack video, we talked about how there's lots of different ways that you get at answering correctly these questions. And sometimes you're working through elimination. Other times you're able to infer more directly. here we just take a look at our variables and we're thinking, who can't be next to k? Well, we only have really one rule that would help us with that, and that's this KPL chain. It makes L always be separated from K by P. 10 gives us an extra condition, and this is the nature of questions. Sometimes they give you more information that further limits the possibilities, right? We talk about games as always being an exercise in constantly narrowing the possibilities until there's not much left. Here they tell us the mirrors live west of the cons. So remember, west is over here. That means we're in scenario number 1. I'll just circle it. We're not looking at 2 for this question. And then it further is then asking us, if M's right here in 3, west of the cons, the rootons cannot live next to both. And then here's all our options planted out right here. So I would just take these one at a time. Could R be between K and P? Sure. R, P, L, and then NO, NO over here, you know? I'm doing this at what might look at like light speed to a beginner, but you'll get very good at doing quick elimination work like this. What about L and P? Again, you should be able to maybe envision that quickly you could get R right between L and P. M and, was that a P that I had written down there? M and P, that looks tougher. How the heck would you get R in between M and P? Right here, MKRP? No way that's going to work, right? M and P are always separated by K. R can't go there. You know, it's only one house per lot, one family per house. So there's no way that's going to happen. We're asking for a pair that R can't live next to both of them. That's C right there. M and P. 11 says that the Newmans live immediately west of the cons. So that puts us down here. We drop N into here. We're definitely in this scenario. Otherwise, we can't put the Newmans just left of the cons. And right now, all of a sudden, our order's totally fixed, right? The only remaining place R can go is here. Remember, R was either in 2 or 3. And then this has to be O right over here. Should be pretty easy to answer the question at this point. What must be false? And it gives us a bunch of pairs living together, and we got to find 2 who cannot live together. ON, yeah, they can't live together. Whereas all these other groups can live together, and in fact are in the diagram. ORs together, PLs together, PMs together, and R and N are living next to each other together. Right? So A is our correct answer for 11. And right now, even if this is your first time seeing it, you're getting maybe a sense of how we work with these scenarios. We find out which one we're in, we look at how the possibilities work out down there, and we get a quick solve in. For question 12, we should be sort of getting a handle on the theme here, which is we get some information in the question that tells us which scenario we're in, and then it's a pretty easy solve from there. Here we're told if the Owens live east of the Muirs, what must be true? So we got to have the O somewhere over here in relation to M. Well, that's not possible down in this scenario. So we know we're up here, and O's got to be over on this side, right? So P, L, and O are now taking up all 3 of these spots. And we got to find something that must be true in this situation. The cons live east of the Muirs. Yeah, that must be true. We're in scenario 1, and in scenario 1, K's always to the east side of M. Correct answer is A. No need to look at the other ones because you got it right away. Last question, 13. If the Owens live east of the cons, so it's again the same situation that we just saw. We know we're not in scenario 2. No way to get O east of K here. Which of the following pair of families must live next to each other? Well, we know that O and P are kind of a little, able to switch order. You can picture POL, you can picture OPL, etc., etc. But over here, things are really fixed. R has to drop into here, and N has to be there. So what we're left with is N and R have to be together, M and R have to be together, I'd be looking for those as the answers. And it should pop out at you pretty quickly right there in D, N and R, right? They have to live together. None of these other pairs have to live together. They can all be eliminated. And I'm moving faster as we go through the questions, but that's often how it works. You start getting a handle on the game, and you can do things more quickly. And remember, if you're just looking at this and it's a demonstration, don't freak out if you don't have much of a clue what's going on. You might want to go in, explore the game yourself for a while, and then take another look at this diagram. But you're not really at the point where I want you having mastery of even these techniques. This is purely a demonstration to just see how these phases of attack work. And pretty soon you'll be up and running and doing this stuff on your own. Okay, let's take a look at another game where we'll explore the phases of attack, and then we'll move on to subsequent lessons. Thanks. Bye.